Welcome to Two Therapists Talking. The hope for this podcast is to talk about important issues related to couples and individuals who are struggling in their lives with many different issues. I'm David Thompson, a marriage and family therapist.
And I'm Sherie Christensen, marriage and family therapist. Please join us as we explore these issues together, and we hope you will learn and be enlightened along the way. Come find us at twotherapisttalking.com. If you like what you're hearing, please get on and rate us and subscribe to the podcast. Welcome back to Two Therapists Talking. I'm Sherie.
And I'm David.
And we are going through a bunch of different anxiety techniques. We've done a lot. We've been talking about this for several episodes, which is great because this is fabulously useful for just about anything. It's a great way to just be more grounded and centered in your life and more present. It's a great way to help with stress reduction, as well as anxiety, panic attacks, and all of those different things. So we have done a lot of work already on generally talking about it. We've done some top-down approaches, processing from the mental side of it, working yourself out of the different stuck spaces that you're in. We've done some bottom-up approaches, right, which is focusing on what's going on in your body and relaxing the body with all kinds of techniques, really, really useful. And we've got some additional things that we've come up with as well to talk about. So this might be one or two episodes in and of itself, but there's just a lot of really good information that can be useful for anxiety and grounding and all of that.
Yeah, and there's no question, most people coming in today struggle with anxiety, maybe all, I would say. Even if they're presenting with a different issue, anxiety plays a role. You know,
right.
Ruminating thoughts or negative self-talk, or they're in a state of fear or insecurity a lot more than they realize. This is good stuff. And so we are very intentionally, I want to be clear.
Yes.
Very intentionally focusing this much on anxiety. I mean, I would love to have this as a resource for lots of future clients or family or friends and say, hey, you know what? If you're looking for help with anxiety, there's 3 or 4 or 5 episodes we did in a row. Even though during these episodes, you've got to wait 2 weeks because that's when they come out. Once they're out, which is really cool.
Hopefully you don't get too much anxiety in between.
Yeah.
But yes, there's just so many resources and so many really critical things that help us live our best life, right? Yep. Like even if you don't feel like you're a super anxious person, right? I've never felt like I've struggled with anxiety in my life, and I use a good chunk of these.
Yeah.
Because they're just helpful tools to live a more grounded, centered, present life.
Right. Okay, so with that in mind, in addition to everything we've already talked about, here are some additional techniques that are also helpful enough, important enough that we want to cover them. And the first is heighten awareness of your emotions by identifying what you're feeling. So this is a common one. You've probably maybe heard the phrase, name it to tame it. So we teach people and children to say what they feel, and that automatically gives power and control. And so if you're angry, say, I'm feeling angry, or I'm feeling sad, or I'm feeling frustrated. So to heighten your awareness of what you're feeling is an important technique.
And what it's doing when you do that is it's pulling your brain out of your middle brain, your amygdala, like all these spaces where we get that heightened emotion or that distress that comes up, and it pulls you into your prefrontal cortex where you can process and think a little bit more. So you're pulling yourself back into that space.
Yeah, and the idea is these are just your feelings or emotions. They're not you. Mm-hmm. Sort of if somebody were to come in here and say, hi, I'm so-and-so, I'm depressed.
Right.
It's like, well, you're so-and-so. You may be feeling depression, but to identify as depression wouldn't be accurate. And that's what we're trying to do.
Yes.
You're not your feelings and emotions. These are things you experience, but they're not you. And so if you can recognize that how you're feeling, whatever you're feeling is there, acknowledge it, and understand that you're more than just that feeling. It helps a lot to be able to then let it go. But if you identify as that's what I am, it kind of feels like you can't let it go. Like maybe you're powerless over it, you're stuck.
Right.
It's who I am. It's a part of my identity now. When really feelings come and go a lot and we experience a lot. And so
Yeah.
that's the separation that we're trying to achieve. I'm more than my feelings. This is what I'm feeling now, but guess what? In short order, it could be entirely different. In fact, just this
Yes.
morning, my daughter, we were getting ready for church, and she came in, and I don't know what she was sad about, but she was. And, my wife is talking to her, and she just kind of, I think she was sniffling. Maybe she had been crying. And I said, okay, do something with me. Name some things that you're feeling. And kids get this. Like, they don't have to have a huge emotion word vocabulary, but they can
Right.
identify sad, they can identify angry. Hopefully we're helping them to do that.
Yeah.
And to help her to shift out of it, I then asked her to name things that she was thankful for. And this is going to kind of the top-down approaches we've talked about.
Right. Right.
And after every one, I'd say, what else? And so she had to really think about it because she's like, well, this. She wanted to keep it short. And I'm like, okay, great. Well, what else? And we're just getting ready and this was like a 10-minute process. By the time we were done, she was feeling great. And it was fine because she'd shifted. But identifying those emotions helps you to let them go. It really does. There's power in it.
Yeah. It's a separate than you, and being aware of them. And sometimes, like David's saying, you don't need to have the most nuanced whatever. But sometimes that's also helpful to look at an emotion wheel or something
Yeah.
like that and go, oh, interesting. Like, I'm not just angry, I'm irritated. Or,
Yeah.
when you have that nuance, it can give you more information, and it kind of puts it out there in front of you where you can look at it rather than having it absorbed inside of you.
Yep.
So, and again, we're also not saying that emotions are like, oh, we just need to get rid of them and then our life is fine, right?
Right.
You may find that, again, this is like, okay, let's get out of the really, really heightened space so that we can be a little bit more aware. And then you may find, oh, interesting, my emotion was telling me something important, right? Like, oh, I need a better boundary here. Or, oh, I need to take more time for myself because I'm doing too much or whatever. But when we're in that super heightened space, it's oftentimes a real challenge to identify that until we've calmed down.
Yeah. And if we don't separate, it's a lot harder to hear what it is the emotion might have to say
Yes.
or to teach, right?
Yes.
So separating those out, it's a good one.
Okay. Next one is that feelings are fluid. So noticing and focusing on how our feelings change, and journaling. I think I love journaling. I think it's so important, but like writing down, thinking about, okay, so I'm feeling this way, but how am I going to feel when I'm better? How am I
Yep.
going to feel after I'm anxious or stressed or whatever, or after this event happens, after I get up and give that big speech or something like that. And then what are those feelings going to be?
And expecting that they will change, like having
Yeah.
confidence that it'll shift. And
Yes.
the speech is a good example.
Yeah.
Because I think we've all had some presentation where we're really nervous at the start. Imagine if we could just be reminding ourselves, this is temporary, these feelings will change, because inevitably, at some point during that speech or presentation or talk or whatever, you kind of start to enjoy it. And it's like the nervous is replaced with sort of like, this is enjoyable and people are engaged and I can tell, they're enjoying
going
this.
well.
And
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
Or even if that's not the case, then it's not until after.
yeah. Or after.
Right?
Uh-huh.
There's going to be this space of time where you're fine. Like it's, not just fine, right? Because that's the like catch-all word, right? But you might feel relieved or happy or excited to be doing something else, or, there's all of these emotions. So being able to kind of think through that, like how's it going to be after? And then even writing those down, then you can start to notice, oh, this is a fluid thing. These feelings move and they change. This isn't forever. This is just a temporary thing. And that can help you actually let go of what's going on more quickly. And and even imagining that change happening now or earlier, right, can start to shift that more quickly.
Yep.
Breathing again. Breathe through the changes that you're imagining happening, right? Always important.
Breathing hopefully is a part of all of these,
Right.
throughout all of these. Not just, well, you breathe to be alive, but
Right. But mindful breathing.
mindful breathing. Yep.
Yep.
So another thing that the literature talks about is acting normal. And this may sound like, well, duh, if you just act normal when you're feeling anxious, but doing little things to cue in your mind and in your body normal acting. And so it's funny, it talks about chew it over literally, where your body, if you have a piece of gum and you're salivating or even imagine chewing gum, can cause this change to take place. And so it's interesting, but you're acting in a way that you wouldn't during a real emergency. So you're breathing deeply, you're talking softly and calmly, you're smiling, those sorts of things that you imagine if there was a real emergency and you had like a caretaker or a caregiver, or let's say after an accident, an EMT or someone, and they're just calm and steady and talking, and it has a very calming effect. So you're sort of doing this for yourself, where even though you're feeling anxious, you're saying, I'm going to treat this normally, just to see if I can take my body out of this stress response cycle, which we've talked about. So the sympathetic nervous system, right?
Right.
Fight or flight, something's wrong, and we're trying to come back into the parasympathetic or rest, relaxation, you're okay. And sometimes it can be as simple as acting normally in these stressful, anxious situations.
Yeah. Okay. So the next one is don't listen, which
Don't listen to what?
sounds kind of funny. But sometimes we get in this pattern of anxiety, right? And it can kind of become this natural way of doing life. Or when certain circumstances happen, then we just get in this natural habit of worrying or feeling anxious. And it can also be a manifestation, just emotional manifestation of physical tension as well. So what we can do, especially if you have that little bit more anxiety type of personality or an anxiety prone brain, right? You can end up feeling anxious a lot just because, right? Just because it's a pattern. So being able to kind of, if that's you and that's an experience that you have, just being able to tell yourself, hey, my anxious brain is just firing inaccurately, right? It's just this habit that's come up and now I have this all the time. So I'm not actually noticing when something is really going on or when something is not going on.
Right.
So it's just firing incorrectly. That's okay. This isn't what it feels like it really is. And that can kind of be a cue to start that relaxation process, and then combining that again, of course, with relaxation breathing, noticing the tension in your body and letting go of that. It can kind of help you in that space if you're just kind of have that low grade worry a lot. Or even when it gets a little higher, you can go, okay, well, hang on. Let's just kind of come back to this space and it's probably firing inaccurately because I always do this when this happens and nothing, it ends up being fine, right? You can kind of walk yourself through that space.
Yep. So anger is another one where and don't show anger. So a lot of anxiety is associated with anger, kind of like you're angry, but you don't know it, but you're feeling things. And so one thing is to try to decrease your sense of tension and stress, and becoming more aware of your anger so that it can be dealt with. And, one thing we talk a lot about in therapy is anger is a secondary emotion. It's an umbrella.
Right.
It's an umbrella because it covers other things. Usually it covers hurt and sad.
Yeah.
And so knowing you're angry doesn't require you to show that you're angry, which is not everybody maybe has personal experience with that. So it's like, can I be angry and not show that I'm angry really? Can I
Yeah.
be sitting here and feeling some strong things, but it's not showing up that way?
Yes.
And so one idea is when you have anxiety, sit down, write as many answers as possible to this question. If I were angry, what might I be angry about? And keep it simple, like single words, brief phrases, and see what comes up. So that's a helpful tool. And we want to do this anyway, because if you can identify what's underneath the anger,
Yeah.
you're better able to meet whatever need is underneath. So if I'm sad or I'm hurting, maybe what I need is reassurance. Maybe what I need is to feel like I'm appreciated,
Yeah.
or I'm recognized, or somebody's thinking about me, or something like that. So this is kind of what we've talked about before. These feelings have something to tell us, and we need to listen as much as we can.
Yeah. All right. The last one we're going to talk about today is have some fun.
Oh,
Do
this is the first
something-
one. You're like, okay,
Yay, I
okay.
can do this one. Like, if I have to pick one.
Yeah, I like this one.
So have a little fun. Maybe act on impulse. It's a really good thing to kind of shift what's going on right away, right? If you're going to do something silly or impulsive or something like that, you can do that right away, and that can really help. Laughing is a really, really wonderful way to shift up. Again, it shifts the chemicals in our brain,
Yeah.
looking up some
Oh, laughing's a big deal, for
some
sure.
funny memes, doing something silly, spending time with your kids or with friends, learning how to relax, be impulsive, have fun is a really big one. Even just doing something silly. I'll do that a lot with my kids, where I'll just make a funny face or a funny noise or just something like that, and it really can break the ice, break the tension that
Breaks the cycle, right?
yeah.
And we talk to couples about doing this. If they're in the same old cycle of maybe arguing or fighting, we say do something completely impulsive.
Yeah.
Do something
Yes.
different. Break the cycle.
Yep. Yeah.
Run out of the house. All of a sudden, mid-sentence.
Yes. Just do something very silly that you're not expecting.
Yep.
This is great. We can absolutely do this as adults. Kids, it's super, super helpful too, right?
Yeah.
Just, if my kids, a lot of times if my kids are anxious about something or they're getting upset about something and they're like, Mom, they'll say something and I'll respond with the information that they need in the same tone. So, oh yeah, it's really, really hard right now. I can see how you're feeling really stressed, or just something like that. And then they're like, what?
That's a good one.
And
Yeah.
it kind of breaks it up and they like laugh about it or, just something like that. So just being silly and impulsive can really, really help. I had a couple recently that actually did this completely on their own. They had been working and trying to do empathy skills and different things, and they get heightened so fast. And so one day they had taken one of their breaks, right, that we do during empathy skills when we need to, and they were coming back together, and they were like, we just need to we need to laugh or do something like that before we start up again. And so they just looked up a bunch of funny memes on their phone.
Oh, yeah.
I was like, that's awesome.
Yep, that's
Way to
awesome.
go. Good job. So just, fun, silly little, run out of the house, jump up and down like an ape. I don't know. Just like things.
You say, okay, you can keep talking
Yeah.
the way you're talking and in the tone you're talking. Just both of you have to start doing jumping jacks while you're talking.
Yes.
It's like, okay,
Or
that's going to be really hard.
or push up your nose like a pig, and or just something, where you just kind of do something unexpected, and
Yeah.
it kind of helps to break things up a little bit and
Yep.
reduce anxiety,
Yep.
right?
So these are some additional techniques. We're going to finish
We've
this
got
off.
more.
We've got more. I know this is a lot, but look, you have no excuse after going through these last 4 or 5 podcast episodes. If you're like, I'm struggling with anxiety, it's like, boy, did we give you how many different ideas and ways to manage. So at least whether or not you do any of it, you can become an expert on
Yes,
anxiety.
an expert on options, which is
Yes.
so great because again, this
You
isn't
need
just
'em.
for anxiety.
Yeah.
It's not just for panic attacks. Like, we're looking at stress. We're looking at grounding. We're looking at, like, being more present parents and
Yep.
spouses. And this is, I mean, it doesn't matter what job you have, you're going to be encountering people with anxiety, or there's going to
Yeah.
be situations about it that are stressful,
Yep.
right? So,
And a lot
whether
of
you're a
people aren't going to
teacher or
know.
anything, yeah.
And you do. So give them some ideas.
Yeah. So it's good. It's good for everybody to have. If everybody knew all of this stuff,
Yeah. Seriously.
it would, the world would be probably a better place.
Yep.
All right. See you
Thanks
next
for
time.
joining us.
Bye. Thank you for listening to Two Therapists Talking. We look forward to sharing more conversations with you. Connect with us at twotherapisttalking.com or email podcast@twotherapisttalking.com. If you like what you're hearing, please get on and rate us and subscribe to the podcast.